How do you teach a sun salutation well? So sun salutations are the backbone of many different kinds of yoga classes, specifically like a vinyasa, a flow class, a power class. We do a lot of sun salutations. So how do you teach them well? In this video, we're going to break that down for you. We're going to look at the purpose of sun salutations, tips for teaching them, and then actually do it. So first, let's talk about what the purpose of a sun salutation is. So if you're teaching like a hatha class or something that's a little slower, you're probably not going to teach a sun salutation. And by that, I mean Surya Namaskar A, Surya Namaskar B, and then there are some variations like Surya Namaskar C or stuff like that. But really, I'm talking about today, Surya Namaskar A. And so if you're teaching like a class to very beginners or to special populations, elderly, you're teaching a hatha class, which is a little slower, you're probably not going to teach a fully paced sun salutation, but that's going to be more for a flow class or a power class. And so let's look at the purpose of a sun salutation. Well, sun salutations are usually taught towards the beginning of class. And just as a note, sun salutations come from the Ashtanga yoga tradition, mostly. So Surya Namaskar A and Surya Namaskar B traditionally are the first things that you practice in an Ashtanga yoga tradition. So our flow styles and our power styles, which derive from Ashtanga, generally follow suit. So a sun salutation is really meant to warm up your body, right? It's big movements, arm movements, leg movements, moving the major joints, getting the blood flowing. We're really moving mostly in this plane, right? So I'm opening the shoulders, opening the hips, and starting to warm up my body for more poses. So it's a little bit less about alignment and a little bit more about just getting your whole body moving. A sun salutation also serves the purpose of aligning breath and movement. So again, if I think about this coming from the Ashtanga yoga tradition, in the Ashtanga yoga tradition, they are very focused on the breath, right? In fact, they just call out numbers and breath calls, and that's what you do. So they're very interested in how the breath supports the movement practice. So in a sun salutation, we're really focusing on linking breath and movement together. So here's the thing, everybody. In a sun salutation, if I'm focused on breath primarily and big body movements, I'm not going to give a lot of alignment tips, right? It's really more about getting people moving. So as teachers, what I need to think about is getting people breathing and getting people moving on the breath. And then when I can, kind of putting in some alignment stuff to keep everybody safe, right? So when I'm cueing breath and movement continually, there's just less time to cue alignment. So we're going to look at some strategies for how you can do that. Okay, now that we've considered the purpose of the sun salutation, let's talk about how we teach it. So as a best practice, I suggest that the first time you teach a sun salutation in any class, you break it down. And by that, I mean you offer modifications, you slow it down, and rather than being one breath per movement, you take a little bit more time with it, set up some key alignment points, and also do easier modifications of the poses so that any beginners in your class will know what their options are. So the first time through, we focus a little bit less on doing the breath calls and a little bit more on just getting everybody safe and aligned and knowing what they're doing. Then the second, third time you teach it, in Ashtanga you would teach it 5 times, but it's different for flow and power. But the next times you teach it a little bit more on the breath with a little bit less of that alignment cueing, right? And so you can kind of build that. So the first time you might teach it with a lot of modifications and a little slower. The second time maybe there's a couple modifications, but you're mostly on the breath. And then if you do it a few more times, then you get everybody moving. And you just kind of hope that everybody's picked up the options that they can do. One thing that we can do when we teach the sun salutations and we're moving quickly is I like to choose a few key places to sneak in a little alignment cue. So in the sun salutation, usually you're going to be cueing inhale and a direct action, a direct cue to get people into the movement. So by that I mean you want to be really clear and start with the verb. Inhale, lift your arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. So you can see that I'm doing the breath first when I cue, and then I'm telling people very directly, no fluff, where to go, what position to go in their body. And so if you're a new teacher and you're just starting to work on teaching the sun salutations, this is where I suggest you start. Inhale, tell them what to do. Lift your arms up. Exhale, forward fold. So just really clean up your language, make it super, super, super simple. Then the next piece to add in is going to be to add a little bit of an alignment cue, with most of the transitions, but particularly the more risky transitions, which would be something like chaturanga. So chaturanga is a place where people tend to fall into the path of least resistance with their core and their shoulders. So that's one part of this series that I do try to work in a little reminder to students of alignment. So I might say, step back into plank, keep your chest broad as you lower to chaturanga, or engage your core as you lower to chaturanga. So there's not a lot of time in the sun salutations to cue, but you do want to try to sneak a couple of those safety cues in as you go. And so you can be discriminating about that. Now, in the sun salutation, when you get to downward facing dog, traditionally in Ashtanga, which is where we're getting this from, you got 5 breaths. So downward facing dog is a great time for you to pause, take a breath, and offer some more specific alignment cues because you have time. You got 5 whole breaths there, right? So a downward facing dog is a really good place to get people oriented into their hands and their feet, make sure their alignment is good, and teach them to really stretch their spine. All right, so now let's take a look at how this goes actually in practice. So now let's take a look at a sun salutation, Surya Namaskar A. So this is typically what you'll do. Now, for this first little piece here, I just want us to look at the breath calls and the movement and get super clear about what those are. So if you've already got those deep locked in your brain, you can skip ahead to the next section. All right, and I suggest you do these with me just so you can feel them in your body. And all I'm gonna do here is call out the breath and the movement. That's it, keeping it super, super simple. And if you're just learning the sun salutations, then I suggest that this is how you start to teach it so that you really get those breath calls and those movements into your language and vocabulary. And again, it can be really, really simple and clear. All right, so we'll get started. So come to the top of your mat in Tadasana. Take a slow breath in. Exhale out. Inhale, lift your arms up. Exhale, forward fold, Uttanasana. Inhale, halfway lift. Plant your hands. Exhale, step back and lower down, Chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. 5 breaths here. So in a typical class, once I get people to downward facing dog, because there's a little time, I might cue some specific things like root into the inner edges of your hands as you pull your hips up. As you lift your hips, sink your heels down and back. On the end of your 5th breath, exhale all the way out, look forward. Walk, step, or jump your feet to the front of your mat. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, reach your arms up to the sky. Exhale, Tadasana. So first, I just want us to be super clear about that breath call and that movement. And there's a couple of places specifically that I just want to point out that are often trouble areas for us as new teachers. And specifically, it's in the forward fold at the beginning of the series and towards the end of the series. So let me just show you, this is a common pitfall that happens. Take a look. Oftentimes I'll hear students say, inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. So that second exhale is actually a mistake. Then they'll have students step back into plank, but they've added an extra breath there. The way that it's supposed to go is inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. This is prepare pose. Right from here, I step back or jump back into chaturanga. And the reason is, if I'm stepping or jumping back into chaturanga, which is eventually what happens in the sequence, look at my chest. If I halfway lift here, my chest is in a great position for chaturanga. But if I forward fold, if I add in this extra forward fold after the halfway lift, then to jump back, I have to lift my chest up again, right? So that would be adding an extra forward fold into the sequence. Now, let me be clear. You are welcome to hold and add things in and to take an extra step whenever you want to. However, you want to do it intentionally. The sun salutation, as it is done traditionally, is inhale, halfway lift, exhale, chaturanga. Now, we might modify that, and we'll look at that a little bit later on, but I want you to know that that's how the breath flow is supposed to go. Inhale, halfway lift, exhale, chaturanga, okay? The other place that I often find is a little confusing at first is when we come forward from downward facing dog. And again, oftentimes people will add in an extra forward fold. I'll show you, this is kind of the incorrect way. From downward facing dog, they'll step forward, forward fold, and then inhale, halfway lift. Actually, the way the transition is supposed to go is exhale, downward facing dog, inhale, halfway lift. So we don't want to add another forward fold in there. So the way that I usually help this out when I'm teaching is I'll have students exhale all the way, step forward on the exhale, and then inhale, halfway lift. Then we have exhale, forward fold. Rise all the way up, take your arms to the sky. Exhale, hands by your sides. So let's just do this one more time together, and I'm just going to do the breath call and the movement. Again, super bare bones, broken down, just to really get super clear about where the breath call and the movement happens. Now I'm going to cue a jump back to chaturanga, but please feel free to step back and lower yourself down or to modify the back bends as you need to. So I'm just kind of doing like the pure sun salutation just as it is. All right, so step to the front of your mat into Tadasana. Hands by your sides. Take a slow breath in. Exhale all the way out. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Take 5 breaths here. Let's just pretend we've taken 5 breaths. After your next exhale, walk, step, or jump your feet to the front of the mat. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, rise up, stand up, arms to the sky. Exhale, Tadasana. So that, my friends, is the bare bones Surya Namaskar. Now, in our next little section here, we're going to take a look at how you would teach this in class. So I'm going to assume for a moment that you're teaching an all levels class. So this is what most of us teach. If you were teaching an intermediate or an advanced class, you might be able to assume that students already know all of the modifications that they should do, et cetera, et cetera. But in an all levels class, chances are you're going to have some beginners. So one of the ways that we can, support the sun salutation for an all levels class is to teach the first time through really slowly. So the first time I teach a sun salutation in class, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to offer modifications and some key alignment points. And my hope with that is that then any beginners in the class have a sense of the modifications that they can do. And also it's the first time through, so even if you are a more advanced student, you may want to do some of the simplified versions first just so you can get warmed up. So I'll show you how I would teach it through the first time. And you'll notice that unlike the bare bones version, which we just did, I might slip in some little alignment cues as we go along. So especially in this first round, I want students to be a little bit more aware of their alignment and to get them set up properly. So then when we start flowing, they have kind of an imprint in their body of the way the pose is supposed to feel. So that's the hope. All right, so here's the first time through. So come to the top of your mat into Tadasana. And you guys, just as an aside, there are lots of ways to teach the sun salutation. You might do Tadasana with your feet together. You might do feet hip distance apart. You might take arms wide or arms forward. I'm not really worrying about that for this particular video. You do it how you want to do it. Really here I'm focusing on the sequence and the breath calls. All right, so from Tadasana, press down through your feet. As you inhale, reach your arms up. As you exhale, forward fold over your legs. Inhale, halfway lift. Bring your fingertips to your shins so that you can lengthen your chest forward. See, I'm slipping in a little extra instruction here. And then as you exhale, plant your hands and step back into plank and pause. So I'm going to take a little extra time. Press into your hands, lift your bottom ribs into your body, and then lightly lower your knees down. So the first time through, I usually have everybody lower their knees down for plank and chaturanga. Keep your chest wide. Exhale, lower all the way down to the floor. Press your pelvis down. Press the tops of your feet down. Inhale, lift your chest, baby cobra. So again, the first time I do Surya Namaskar A, I'm going to do the easier back bend here, just baby cobra. And then exhale, press through hands and knees, all the way up and back, downward facing dog. And again, I can take some time to cue downward facing dog here. First time through, I would definitely have everybody bend their knees so they could stretch their spine, etc., etc. At the end of your next exhale, walk your feet to the front of your mat and inhale, halfway lift, reach your chest forward. Exhale, forward fold. Let your head go. Press through your feet, come all the way up to stand, reach your arms up. And exhale, take your hands by your side, Tadasana. So the first time through, a couple of the significant adaptations I made, I took an extra breath in plank. I had people lower their knees for plank to chaturanga, and I had people do baby cobra rather than upward facing dog. So now, as I continue to move through Surya Namaskar A, as I do it a couple more times, I'm going to start to, I like to keep those modification options in my cueing, but I'm going to cue it a little bit more with the breath. So let's look at how I might do it the second time. Okay. And again, I'm keeping my language real simple, but I might just sneak in an alignment cue every now and then as I have time. All right, press through your feet. Inhale, reach your arms up. Soften your knees. Exhale, forward fold. As you inhale, halfway lift. Plant your hands as you exhale. Step back to plank and lower all the way down or halfway down chaturanga. Inhale, baby cobra or upward facing dog. And on your exhale, lift up and back, downward facing dog. Press into your hands, pull the hips back, cue downward facing dog, etc., etc. I'll wait 5 breaths. And then at the end of your exhale, look forward, walk, step, or jump your feet to the front of your mat. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, rise up, reach your arms to the sky. And exhale, hands by your side. So you notice that time through, I made it just a little bit more flowy. And I also, rather than teaching everybody the modifications, I gave them the options. Knees down or up as you lower down from plank. Baby cobra or upward facing dog as you move into your back bend. So in this final one, I will offer kind of the most advanced variations, which would be jumping back to chaturanga, which is kind of the hardest transition to do, but is ultimately where the series is going. So this might be how I would teach it the 3rd time, 4th, 5th time. All right, so we'll give it a go. And I even might say to my students, I'm going to move us through on the breath. Please feel free to keep lowering your knees down or take baby cobra. That's totally fine. So you can even tell your students, hey, take those modifications. All right, Tadasana at the front of your mat. Press down through your feet. Inhaling in, reach your arms up to the sky. Soften your knees. Exhale, forward fold. On your inhale, halfway lift. On your exhale, plant your hands, step or jump back, chaturanga. Inhale into your back bend. Draw your heart through. Engage your core as you press back to downward facing dog. Root down through the inner edges of your hands as you wrap your outer arms in. And as you press through your palms, pull your thigh bones up and back. Lift your hips as you sink your heels towards the floor. Take 2 more breaths. 1 more inhale. Exhale out at the bottom of your exhale. Walk, step, or jump your feet to the front of your mat. Inhale, halfway lift. And as you exhale, forward fold, drop your head. Inhale, rise all the way up to stand. Reach up, stretch up. And as you exhale, Tadasana, hands by your side. So there you have it. And you can see that in that sun salutation, I prioritized staying with the rhythm. I gave some options. And when I could, I snuck in some little alignment cues, like soften your knees as you forward fold. Just some common risk factors that you might want to work into your script as you teach. And as a final thought, don't hesitate to make a real specific script for Surya Namaskar. We use this all the time. And so it's very helpful to have like a very efficient and clean script that you can use to teach it. And be mindful about it, like especially in that chaturanga transition. That's a place where people tend to lose their core or drop their shoulders forward. So you want to be really strategic about when you put in little cues to help people protect their bodies. Okay, everyone, so I hope you enjoyed this video on how to teach a sun salutation. I hope that gave you some really clear tips. If you're teaching a flow style, a vinyasa style, just remember, always cue the breath and be simple. Be super simple because you're going to be busy just getting them flowing with that movement. Remember, too, to try to sneak in those little alignment cues as you can, especially in those kind of riskier transitions like chaturanga. And also 3, remember to do the first time slow. Do the first time slow so that you can give people lots of options, give them some more alignment, and get them set up to do it properly. All right, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe for more tips. If you have tips or tricks that you like to use for your sun salutations or any questions about this, put it in the comments below. And I'd love to hear from you.